What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we'll be taking a look at Tales from the Hood, directed by Rusty Cundiff. Tales from the Hood is pretty much a horror anthology in the same vein as Creepshow, so I'm going to do my best to keep this review as short as I can. Going to give you my brief thoughts on all four of the major segments and the wraparound segments as well. Let's waste no time. Let's get into this. So the first segment of Tales from the Hood is called Road Cop Revelation. Basically, I think this is the weakest segment, one of the weakest segments of this movie. It's not horrible per se, but I'm just not really into it. The basic overall story, this story covers police brutality, and we see these cops beat down this guy, and then they accuse him of doing drugs. Now, it so happens that the guy they beat down and killed was a guy called Martin Morehouse, who was also a politician who's on a war against drugs, and it accuses the police precinct of dealing drugs out. So he comes back from, and there's this one rookie cop called Clarence who sees the whole thing happen, but he didn't do nothing about it. And this rookie cop just happened to was there that night. So when Martin Morehouse, who was played by Tom Wright, comes up from the grave, he gets revenge. He kills the cops, and he drives Clarence insane. And Clarence happens to be black, by the way. So yeah, that's pretty much the story of the first segment. It's okay for what it is. I wasn't really engaged by it, though. I thought Tom Wright was pretty good as the undead zombie, and I like seeing Michael Massey and I like seeing Michael Massey because I'm a Michael Massey fan. So that has that going for it. Now, segment number two, I actually think is one of the stronger segments, though I do have a problem with it when it gets close to it, when it gets to the finality of it. So segment two is called Boys Do Get Bruised. Now this one pretty much covers domestic violence. So we see this little boy called Walter who says who goes to school with bruises on his arm, and he says that the monster always gets him. Now we don't now before the big reveal what the monster is, we see shadows and we see hints that the monster is actually a real monster. But the big twist at the end is that he's the victim of an abusive house. His stepfather beats him and his mother, and the teacher, who was played by Rusty Cundiff, he's doing an investigation, trying to figure out what's going on with Walter at home. And when it's revealed that it's an abusive stepfather who not only beats Walter but also beats Walter's mom in the process, the teacher tries to help out. He gets his ass kicked, but there's this thing where that when Walter draws what's been bothering him, and he crumbles and he like rips that paper apart, it also hurts whoever it is that hurts him. Example: there's this bully in the movie that bullies Walter around. So Walter drew a picture of him, and then he crumpled that paper, and the bully was severely injured. Case in point, Walter draws a picture of the monster, and when he crumbles the paper, his stepfather just gets brutalized, and the stepfather is played by David Allen Greer. Sorry, not David Allen Greer. It's played by I don't know why I got confused. Like, the stepfather is played by David Allen Greer, and I like him, seeing as this over the top abusive stepfather type guy. He's just yelling at everyone, say motherfucker, like bitch. And then he punching the kid, punching his wife, punching the teacher. Now, even though I think David Allen Greer's performance is very entertaining, the subject matter that you're dealing with is really kind of heavy-handed, so I'm not really a big fan of kind of like turning it into a comedy bit. At the end of the movie, when you see David Allen Greer get twisted and mangled up because the paper's being crumpled, it looks like something out of a Looney Tunes cartoon. And when you're dealing with the subject of child abuse, I'm not a big fan of making it seem light. If you're gonna go there, go there. Don't chicken out and do a Roadrunner or do like a Looney Tunes cartoon bit when he looks all disturbed and mangled, and he's still trash talking as well. So, for the second segment, I like the first half. The second half kind of falls flat for me, but the performances in both the two segments, again, I want to iterate, they're very, very solid performances. So, segment two is probably the strongest segment of the entire movie, and probably the best segment of the entire movie. It's called KKK Comeuppance, which stars Corbin Burnson as this former KKK Klansman known as Metker, who's running for political office. But it just so happens that Metker is happening to be living in a house that was once owned by a slaver. So the whole thing about this segment is he's in this house, but this house again was run by a slaver, and the killed slaves were trapped into these, or their spirits were trapped inside these dolls, which was created by this voodoo witch type of old lady. And this segment is great. I love this segment. I thought Burnson is just deliciously over the top as this racist politician. He is hilarious. For the most part, first half of this segment, he's acting off Roger Gunneville Smith. And for the last half, he's pretty much acting all alone by himself, and he is carrying this segment. And you can clearly tell this man's having a ball playing this character. He's just so over the top goofy with it that you just can't help but be entertained by it. So Corbin Burnson puts on a really good over the top performance for this segment, and I like the whole concept of these little killer dolls coming after him. And we do get a cameo by who I call the Black Ralph, who's like, "We're gonna be found peace in the dollhouse. In the dollhouse, have no peace in the dollhouse." I thought that guy was hilarious. So yeah, segment number 3, my opinion, the best segment of this entire movie from start to finish. The segment's great. And then we get to the 4th segment, which is called Hardcore Convert, and it's pretty much about this guy who is a gangbanger. He gets into a shootout, barely survives when the cops save him, and he has the choice to go into this rehabilitation program to change his ways for an only parole. And basically, this entire segment is a commentary on gang violence and the effects of gang violence and stuff like that. This is very, very, very heavy-handed segment, and I'm not a big fan of it. I don't really care for it. I mean, I like the trippy visuals near the end of the segment, but overall, I think this is like the first one. It's a very weak segment, and it just didn't really connect with me in any way, to be honest with you. But again, I want to iterate the performance in the movie in this segment was fine, start to finish. I do like the overall set design of this hospital that he ends up in. It has a very classic Universal style Gothic look to it, and the inside of it looks like a Frankenstein laboratory. So I like the aesthetic. It looks great. Okay, so those are all the segments, and for the most part, 2 out of the 4 are actually really solid. The first one and the last one, while not horrible segments, they don't really leave much of an impression on me as a whole. So now we get to the pretty much what really ties this movie together are these 3 gangbangers known as Stack, Bulldog, and 8-Ball. They pretty much go to this mortician's house to see the mortician named Mr. Sims, played by Clarence Williams III, because these 3 gangbangers want to get the shit, and the shit is at the mortuary house. And all these segments are tied together by the mortician telling the gangbangers each one of these stories individually until they get to the last person, who's Crazy K in the last segment, and it was revealed that Crazy K was killed by these 3 gangbangers. And it's also revealed that the gangbangers were dead the entire time because Crazy K's gang got their come up, killed these 3 gangbangers and gave them their comeuppance in retaliation for killing Crazy K himself. And it's revealed the entire time that the actual mortician house was actually hell, and Clarence Williams was the devil himself. And it's actually a really cool, fun twist. And the performances of the 3 gangbangers are hilarious, particularly the one of Bulldog. He cracks me the hell up, especially at the end where he's like, sees the devil. He has the most over-the-top scared face I've ever seen that I can't stop laughing. It is hilarious. It's funny. So, yeah, overall, those are my thoughts on Tales from the Hood. I thoroughly enjoy this movie. I like it a lot. Despite 2 weak segments, you still got 2 relatively strong segments, and you got the connective tissue of the mortuary house, which is just great all unto itself, with an over-the-top yet enjoyable performance by Clarence Williams III himself, and the rest of the cast doing a phenomenal job all to themselves as well. And of course, this movie is beautifully shot by Rusty Cundiff. Does a great job behind the director's chair. I like the production value of this movie. The KK Comeuppance, to me, has the best in terms of tension and suspense and pacing. KKK Comeuppance is the best directed of all these segments. While all the other segments are fine unto himself, I can't iterate how much I think KK Comeuppance is the better of the bunch. Okay, so yeah, those are my thoughts on Tales from the Hood. Overall, I'm going to give this movie a solid 8 out of 10. Got two strong segments, plus the wraparound segments are good to themselves. While the first and last segments are not that great, they're not bad either. So an 8 out of 10 for a very underrated horror anthology movie. So yes, those are my thoughts on Tales from the Hood. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Do you like it? Do you hate it? I would like to know. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.